Now, this required what Bolsheviks call vigilance, but it's important to understand that Spaniards were very vigilant in these years on both sides of the Civil War. Spanish archives were just filled with denunciations of people sent to all sorts of Spanish government offices, neighborhood groups, etc., denouncing people who had, you know, been friends of Franco or his allies, or had opposed the Republic, or had done something wrong. Sometimes they just hated these people. I mean, let's not dismiss the fact that it was a good way to settle grudges too. But the point is, it wasn't just communists, therefore, who were looking to create fractures within the population on the Republican side around political issues. Okay? But the communists have their one particular campaign, anti-Trotskyism, that gives it a certain coherence. And they're going to focus these energies and efforts on two groups, Trotskyists and these group, the POUM, as I mentioned. Again, in English, should be the Workers' Party of Marxist Unification. And I'm just going to call them by their Spanish name, the Pumistas, because I like it. I think it's cool. You know, it's kind of like, wow, are those Nikes or Pumistas? Anyway. Now, Stalinists were very concerned about this group, the POUM, which was centered mostly in Catalonia, the northeastern corner of Spain. Okay, they had their own, you know, agents and sympathizers monitoring this group within Barcelona and elsewhere. But when they started to conduct an anti-Trotskyist campaign against both Trotskyists and the POUM, okay, that is, two groups fit under one category, it wasn't secret information that they used, but rather public publications that they used to point out why the POUM and the Trotskyists were basically the same thing, and why we should dislike them. Okay, the archives in Moscow and the Spanish Communist Party archives in Madrid are just filled with clippings and so on. That's, you know, party members and agents, shall we call them, were taking out of POUM newspapers and Trotskyist newspapers, and then from that they would write pamphlets that they would use at the front and in other places. Okay, but the common theme in what they clipped was the demand that the revolution take precedence over the needs of the war, okay? They were constantly criticizing the Popular Front as an alliance of bourgeois politicians. They were criticizing the Republic because it was a bourgeois institution. They criticized the conduct of the war and the very nature of the war itself, okay? So, in addition, they also attacked the Spanish Communist Party and the Soviet organ, the Comintern, as authoritarians, as counter-revolutionaries, etc. And by doing that, they also fueled the anger of people who were joining the party. Okay? So such public material, you know, provided lots of credible evidence that these two revolutionary parties were, in fact, opposing the war, or at least hampering the war effort. Okay? In a book that was put out about 6 or 7 years ago by two Spanish authors, a guy named Elorza and his wife, Vizcarrondo. Okay. They've gone through a lot of these documents, and I've been through some of the documents they've been through, and others, and so we've overlapped it a lot. But they come to the conclusion that, as they put it, in contrast to the later images that have made the POUM a party of pure but naive revolutionaries, the reading of their official text presents them as out-and-out enemies of the Popular Front. And this is how communists saw it as well. Okay? We won't get into how this transformation took place in the years after the Civil War. Okay? But in the Soviet Union, so too in Spain, the label Trotskyist, which included these Pumistas, okay, was a pretty flexible one. Okay? To the Comintern and to people in Spain, the POUM was a Trotskyist party. Okay? Now the fact is the POUM was not a Trotskyist party. Trotsky didn't want anything to do with the POUM after 1936. Okay? But there are reasons why people could easily come to this conclusion. Just give you a couple. One of the heads of the of the POUM is a fellow named Andrew Nin. And Nin is kind of like 9 Inch Nails, you know, just Nin. Okay? Except he actually puts his letters in properly. Nin had been a communist. He had worked in Moscow in the 1920s. He had been Spain's representative to Moscow, and there, during the party debates in the 1920s, he had sided with Trotsky. He remained a close personal set of connections to Trotsky, even when Trotsky was in emigration. Okay? So that the personal tie of Nin, who's the head of this organization, the PUM, and Trotsky was well known. Nin himself, at a meeting of the government of Catalonia, proposed that the Catalan government invite Trotsky to come and live in Barcelona, okay, and that they would give him political refugee under the protection, as he put it, of our party in the Barcelonan working class. He makes this presentation at a cabinet meeting in which two communists are sitting. So this was hardly a secret. You know, they say, oh, I guess we know where he stands. He wants to bring Trotsky into the country. So connecting the PUM to Trotsky was not very hard for Spanish communists. Likewise, connecting Trotskyists to the PUM was not hard. One of the things they have is a document which they published in the newspapers, where a group of Trotskyists say that, this is 1936, that although we are in disagreement on some points of PUM policy, we have decided to ask you for adhesion to the PUM. That is, can we join? Okay? And then they end the letter with an assurance that, quote, we're ready to adhere to the PUM and submit ourselves to the discipline of the party. We assure you of our loyalty. Now, there was a thing we refer to as Trotsky's left turn, okay? French turn, I should say, in the 1930s, where Trotskyists were directed by Trotsky and others to join socialist parties and anarchist groups and so on, so as to win from those groups support for the Trotskyist movement. And this is kind of a version of this, and it didn't work out well because already in January 1937, 3 months later, even the PUM is trying to get rid of these people, and we can't tell. But to communists, that didn't make any difference that the PUM was getting rid of Trotskyists. The fact is that the two of them had joined forces, okay, and evidence to the contrary was not willingly accepted, okay. So what we have then is a kind of evidentiary base, if you will, for communists believing that the PUM and Trotskyists were the same. Trotskyists are very small in number in Spain. Most of them are foreigners, Germans, French, the US, and so on, who went to fight to defend the Republic. There are very few Trotskyists in Spain itself. But in January 1937, the head of the Comintern, a guy named Georgy Dimitrov, sends a telegram to the head of the Communist Party, Jose Diaz, and he says to him, quote, use the 1937 trial, that's one of the second show trial in Moscow, of Pyatakov and consorts to politically liquidate the PUM and to try and obtain from working elements of this organization a declaration condemning Trotsky's terrorist band. It's a kind of an odd thing. On the one hand, calling for the political liquidation of the PUM, and yet at the same time asking them to say, we hate Trotskyists too. It's not clear what the connection is between the entry of Trotskyists into the PUM and this telegram are. I haven't been able to find any connecting tissue. But to Spanish communists, this was quite welcome. Okay? And they went at it full blown. Okay? What upset communists in Spain the most about Trotskyists, well, and now I'm talking Trotskyists and Pumistas, okay, was the belief that what these parties wanted was to undermine the authority of the Republican Army, to let the Civil War be fought by local militias rather than a national unified army, okay, and to demoralize soldiers, and especially the wounded. They seem to pay a lot of attention to those who were in military hospitals, okay. There were reports from political commissars, various parts of the Republic, coming into party headquarters, where they spoke of people in military units trying to convince soldiers to leave the front illegally, that is, desert, to go take part in political activities in Barcelona with the PUM. There are a number of reports that anarchists and Pumistas are actually trying to undermine the security of the border in France and Spain. Whether these are true or not almost makes no difference. It's what they thought was happening, okay? If I think something, oh my God, just look at American politics today. You know, don't let the facts interfere with your point of view. You know, do this. But they get to the heart of the kind of accusation that communism